Another key challenge, ladies and gentlemen, for your sector is property and what you can do to try and find homes for people. It's again one of the big conundrums of the modern era is trying to get local authorities to fill a void that has been created not by you guys but by other elements. And one of the level criticisms that is thrown at you is, why aren't you doing more about vacancy? Why aren't you doing more, particularly about those properties that are there? Properties, by the way, you don't own, but people expect you to do something with. Now, Dublin City Council has been very proactive in this regard, and I'm delighted to say our second speaker is talking about adapt and reuse of vacant property from Dublin City Council. Will you please welcome Fiona Creighton, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you to NOAC and the CCMA for organising this event this morning. So the Adaptive Reuse Unit was set up 2 years ago within the Housing Department of Dublin City Council. It was established as an innovation unit aimed at creating new approaches to social housing development through acquisition of commercial property. So as we know, there's a very high level of vacancy in commercial property in Dublin. The recent Geodirectory report from Q2 of last year indicated that over 13% of commercial buildings are fully vacant. There's probably the same amount again of partially vacant buildings. So if we include over-the-top vacancy and fully vacant buildings, in some areas of Dublin City Council we have up to 29% vacancy in commercial property. Our estimates are that there are about 4,000 vacant or or partially vacant commercial buildings in the Dublin City Council administrative area, and that number is continuing to increase. So over the past 2 years, we've been assessing properties that come on the market from the perspective of their suitability for conversion to apartments, and in particular for the creation of social housing. We've completed 17 feasibility studies, and so far we've received funding approval for 6 projects. So I'm going to present mainly today on our flagship project, which is a property on Fitzwilliam Quay. I don't know why that's not moving on. Hold on. Okay, so this is our flagship project. So it's the first property that we purchased. It was a vacant office building that came for sale on the market just after we established the unit. So it kind of already looks like an apartment block. There's apartments adjacent to the building on either side. It's in an excellent location. It just it's in Ringsend, and it faces onto the River Dodder, and it's overlooking the Aviva Stadium there. It has great transport connections. You can walk into the city. It's adjacent to a DART station, and it has really good bus routes. So this was a really good opportunity for us. It was a relatively newly built building, and it was just becoming vacant, which means it had been occupied up to the point where we bought it, which meant that there was the building was in good condition. So our process is then that what we do is we engage an architect to carry out a feasibility study for any building that we're interested in, and we go through a number of options for the potential for conversion of the property to apartments. We carry out a building condition survey, and then we prepare a cost plan for development of the property. So in this case, we saw that the optimum solution was to create 15 one-bedroom apartments, so 5 one-bedroom apartments on each floor. And then we prepare a total cost estimate for the project, which includes the acquisition of the property. So in this case, the cost of the development was in the region of 420,000. So that's pretty high, but it's actually a very good value for cost for the delivery of social housing, and particularly in the Dublin 4 area. New build social housing development is significantly higher in that area. So then our next stage in the process is we prepare a business case, and we submit a funding application to the Department of Housing. We do that through the Social Housing Investment Programme funding mechanism, and once we receive approval, then we can engage and commence to purchase the property. So we were successful in this case, and we acquired the building in March of last year. So as well as converting the building into apartments. We're running a number of kind of sub-projects within the building. Ringsend is identified as a decarbonisation zone under the Climate Action Plan in Dublin City Council. So there's a lot of happening in the area. There's a district heating project and a waste energy project. So we really wanted to focus on this as a kind of flagship climate action project, actually more than a social housing project, because this is kind of becoming more evident as we did our feasibilities. So the building was in really good condition, and there's really good fixtures and fittings in the buildings, like glass partitions and doorways and blinds, kitchen and bathroom fixtures and fittings, and shelving units. So we're running a circular economy project as part of a sub-project as part of this project, where we are going to reuse all of these internal fixtures and fittings, and hopefully that will generate additional income for the project as well, possibly. Another sub-project that we're running is, we were slightly delayed in appointing a design team to the project. There was an issue with procurement. So in the meantime then, we've actually arranged for meanwhile use of the ground floor office. We don't like to leave buildings vacant for prolonged periods. There's quite a lot of work to do in terms of inspections and management and ensuring there's no unauthorised occupation of the building. So it's actually really good to have somebody using the building, even if it's only temporarily. So our Climate Action Office has a regen project that they're running, and they use the ground floor office about 1 or 2 days a week now, and the office space is being used to host a drop-in centre to provide energy information and solutions to the Ringsend and Poolbeg community. And another sub-project that we're delivering as part of the project is, so there's a kind of a hard-standing car parking area to the front of the property. We'll be depaving that and installing green infrastructure, sustainable drainage systems. And we're also hoping to pilot the first share car service in social housing developments in Dublin. So that's been done quite successfully in cities like Bremen in Germany, and we're hoping to do that here. So that will be a private share car, like one car to share between the 15 apartments. So in summary, I suppose why we see this project as exemplifying good practice is, number one, we can deliver social housing at reduced cost when compared to new build development in the Dublin City Council area. It's an example of a best practice approach to low carbon housing development. There's about 70% less carbon output from reusing an existing building than there is for a new build development. We're delivering the circular economy project, reusing the fittings and fixtures as much as possible, and we've arranged for meanwhile use of the building to ensure that we're, maximising the potential of the building while we're delivering it through the design phase, planning phase, and before we get to construction. And also then we have the inclusion of the innovative mobility management solution in the project. So just a note then on the climate action targets. Sorry, this isn't moving on again. Okay. So the Irish Green Building Council have done a lot of work modelling basically the planned development to 2030. And if we keep going the way we're going for the next 5 years, kind of prioritising new build development, instead of reducing our carbon emissions by 40%, we'll actually increase them. And then they've run a number of modelling exercises, and they've shown that. Sorry, this is having problems with this again. Okay, that they have proposed a roadmap to 2030, which includes a number of objectives, mainly that we have to significantly reduce the carbon intensity of new development, but also that at least 124,000 of our new homes have to be created by reusing existing properties if we're going to meet our climate action targets. So I'm hearing a lot of numbers being put out about what the fines will be. The most recent I heard is that we'll be paying 30 billion in fines if we don't reach our climate action targets. So that's significant. So we really need to be promoting this type of development. Now I'm just going to, so I presented there in our flagship project, and I'm just going to run through a few of the other feasibility studies that we've done over the last 2 years. This is another building that we purchased it's in Phibsborough. It's kind of along the shopping area in Phibsborough Village in Dublin. It's a former bank. It was vacant for a long period. There's quite a lot of issues with access to the building, and then there's the vaults and the safes from the bank. So there was a number of reasons why maybe it wasn't selling on the market. So we acquired this building. So as you could see in this case, the cost per apartment is 560,000. So it's very high, higher than, let's say, the final valuation of the apartments. But this is kind of the reality in Dublin. Most of the vacant property are these kind of smaller buildings, maybe of historic significance or protected structures. And these make up the majority of the buildings in Dublin that are causing the vacancy and dereliction problem. Another one that we've acquired is this protected structure on Capel Street. This had been vacant for a long period. There's a lot of work happening in Capel Street. We pedestrianised the street recently. And so we really don't want to see buildings remaining vacant and falling derelict. So in this case, we'll be converting the upper floors to 4 apartments, and we'll be retaining the ground floor. In the previous one, we're actually converting the ground floor to apartments, but in this one, we're retaining it as for commercial use. In this case, then, we needed to get 2 different funding sources, because the way the funding systems work in the Department of Housing is there's separate funding for social housing, and then separate funding if you also have a commercial unit in the development. So as I said, we've done 17 feasibility studies kind of across a wide range of properties. These are 4 more examples. The one on the left is, again, a former bank that's been vacant for a number of years. In this case, on the image on the bottom left, you can see that we included 2 one-bed mews houses in the rear. So it's not just the conversion of the properties. If we have available space, we also propose to build to the rear of the buildings. And then the 3 buildings on the right are protected structures. There's a lot of vacancy now coming on the line in George and Dublin, both on the north and south side. So it was really good to do those feasibility studies. Again, the cost for conversion of those properties is slightly higher than when compared with the first project that I presented. This is just kind of a collage of images that was prepared by 3rd-year geography students in DCU. We worked with Kathleen Stokes, who's the lecturer on that course, and they did some vacancy surveying with us one day. So they walked around the city and they identified vacant and partially vacant property, and also identified the potential or the adaptive potential in the buildings. So these kind of collages actually give quite a good impression of the typology of building. Initially, when we started our unit, we thought that there would be larger vacant office buildings that we could, maybe create 50 apartments, but actually that's not the case. And the reality is that we have about 4,000, small, tricky buildings that are vacant at the moment. So it's going to be a challenging task. So the key learnings then from our what we've done in the last 2 years is that number 1, creating new homes through adaptive reuse can be less expensive than new build. So of the 17 feasibility studies that we've done, in only 1 case was the project not viable. Also, it's quite evident that increased financial supports are needed in the case of protected structures and heritage buildings, not necessarily the case in newer office buildings. So it's not just a case of having a funding mechanism that provides funding for all adaptive reuse projects. It really needs to be specific to the project. The private sectors they're constantly calling out for additional support to de-risk these projects, design support and de-risking from a planning perspective. And also another thing we've learned is that we really do need a better way to assess the value of these projects. At the moment, I suppose when the Department of Housing is assessing a funding application, they just see it in terms of what is the cost of creating a new home. They don't see the reduced costs in terms of the infrastructure that doesn't need to be delivered, or the fact that we're meeting our climate action targets by continuing to promote these developments. So we have a lot to learn, I suppose, as we progress the projects. We have 6 projects on our programme at the moment, and hopefully I'll be able to present again in a few years when we've done a little bit more. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Fiona. That is fascinating because, we spent enough time talking on News Talk Breakfast about derelict buildings, and I'm delighted to hear that. And I can't wait to tell Shane Coleman about the one in Philipsburg. He's always banging on about Philipsburg as if it's the only place in the world that matters. But it just goes to show you that with the right frame of mind, the change that a local authority can actually have and make a real impact. And I'm looking forward to seeing that unit come to more fruition.